Thank you, Cap. So good afternoon. I am really excited to be here. I get a big kick out of doing these types of talks because I think there's a lot of things that have happened along the way that need to be shared and that everybody should get a chance to take part in and take advantage of. What I do want to say as a ground rule is that we need to have this be interactive. So I'm going to tell a story and I'm going to go step by step through sort of my journey, and we'll talk about some of the themes that the college wanted me to touch on as we go through that journey. But, you know, as I say things that resonate with you or questions come out of something I might have said, I'd really like for you to raise your hand and stop and let's have this be a discussion. Because it's likely, whatever it is that you're thinking, if we get to talk about it, others will get a benefit from it. Somebody else is probably thinking the same thing or would like to, you know, have raised their hand. So, you know, I just encourage you to take advantage of this being an interactive session. And plus, it'll make it more lively, and the time will go by a little fast for those of you that are here for class. So Kat gave you my bio, but I'm going to put it up because well, first let's do the agenda. And by the way, guys, I don't follow PowerPoints and presentations very well, so yeah, we're going to try. We'll try to stay on task here, but no, I'm not making any promises. But the agenda basically is, you know, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. That'll be next. And then we'll go through the journey, which includes these 4 things: developing confidence, building a leadership team at RILA, some giving back. When we talk about that, that's kind of important. And then where we are today, what's actually happening with me and my leadership team today. And then we'll talk about some lessons that we can leave you with. Why it was important for me to have this slide put together was really the first 2, and maybe the third one. The first, I was born and raised in Arkansas, and the environment and the place that I came from was very, you know, let's just call it humble and modest. Not a lot of, very small town, you know, only 75, 80,000 people really in the town. I mean, it's grown a little bit bigger than that now, but it was a very small environment. 2 high schools, North Side and South Side, very creative. They were in naming those schools, but it's North Side, South Side, and it's still that way today. And I think at a foundation, there was so much that came out of those humble beginnings that apply to whatever's happening to me now. And it did apply to everything that happened throughout the journey. So it's important for me to kind of take us back, and we'll go back to Arkansas a few times doing the story. Wilberforce University, you know, similar to Arkansas in that it was most of you guys never heard of this school, right? And it's because it's so small. You know, right now I think there's like 600 or 700 students there. It was my high school senior class was bigger than the school, the whole college. But foundationally, what happened for me there was really influential and instrumental into what happened to me as far as some of the decisions that I made around career and being a professional. And still today, you know, I draw on that experience. The other things are interesting. I mean, we'll talk about the D&B experience. I was fortunate enough in 2010 that we had some success in the company that I was, you know, recognized with E&Y's Entrepreneur of the Year, which is very prestigious, and a lot of folks aspire to get that. I was fortunate enough to have that happen. And then today, some of the boards that I'm a part of, including Kaiser Permanente is probably the most prominent on that list. And then I'm the CEO of E-Verify, which we will talk about. See it big and keep it simple. If we don't leave with anything, and there'll be several quotes through the day, the one thing that I definitely want to leave you with is that you have to think about things in a big way if you're going to be successful, in my opinion. If you're going to be successful at any level, you can't suffer from smallness of thought. You gotta think about it big. You gotta think that it's possible, because everything is possible. if there's not any one thing that will come out of this story, is that is true. Anybody can do it. I'm not really never seeing myself as anything special. It's just that I thought about things, I think, in the right way, that everything was possible. I've always been encouraged about what it is that could be done, and never been led by what limitations that are there. There are always going to be things that get in the way, but if you got, if you think about things big, you got a chance of being successful. But you can't make it complicated. It's always got to be simple. Okay, we'll start with D&B. So I graduated from Wilberforce, and I had a couple of jobs. I worked for Whirlpool for a little while, and I worked for ABF Freight Systems, and I did different jobs with them. I moved back to Arkansas to work for Whirlpool, and had the opportunity at ABF to move out to New York. And I was in a sales role, and it wasn't all that. I didn't see myself really going anywhere professionally with those jobs. And then I got married, and we moved to Arizona because my wife was in graduate school, and so we moved there for her to study. And while I was there, I got on with Dun & Bradstreet. So I took a job at D&B, and it actually was a step back from where I was professionally. I had worked in a sales job, and I had a big account, a big spending account, and it was a nice job that I had in New York. But when we moved to Arizona, I took a job that was actually on the phone as a customer service representative, or business analyst is what they called us, in the Tucson, Arizona office in D&B. So, and I kind of thought, well, I needed a job. First, why I took that job is because I actually needed a job. We moved there to Arizona, and it was kind of, to pay our rent, we were going to have to work. And so D&B was the first offer that I got. And so I thought I'd go in and see what it was like, and went in, and I could instantly see that if I did things the right way, it could actually put me on a path for, achieving some success professionally. And that happened. We started out in Tucson. They promoted me over to LA. My wife decided at the time that it would be okay to kind of follow what was happening with the career in D&B. And so we made the decision to move from Tucson over to LA. And I got a promotion, and things went well in that job. I got promoted again. They moved us to a different office in LA. I got promoted again, and things were happening pretty rapidly. And it's up to the point where we got an opportunity to move to corporate headquarters, which was out in New Jersey. And so this is the first sort of challenge, and it's one of the things I want you guys to be thinking about too, as you start to try to make decisions about transitioning. And you don't see it as much anymore, but it was definitely important when I was moving through the career ranks, is that I was flexible and open to opportunity. So for me to move in Dun & Bradstreet, I had to say I was willing to move. And you'll see, I think one of the bullets here is that we moved 12 times in 15 years. I worked there 15 years, and we moved all over the country almost every year. So worked in California, we moved to New Jersey, to Washington, D.C., to Atlanta, to North Carolina, to Chicago, back to Atlanta. And it was because I had an openness toward opportunity and making the investment in my career that I was willing to move, that it paid off, and I learned every time. Every step of the way, I was learning a little bit more about business and getting some of the foundational stuff that I needed to be ultimately later an entrepreneur. I knew all about it. I mean, that's what D&B did. They collected information on companies, and I took it upon myself to really study and understand that. And I had the support of my family. Along the way, over those 15 years, there were two kids, and a variety of career moves for my wife, which we'll talk a little bit about the social aspect of this, because that's important too. This is a complete. Everything that you do it's connected to every facet of your life. And so, you have to be mindful of who it is that you're attaching yourself to as a partner, because it could really have the impact on not allowing you to achieve some of the things that you're trying to achieve. And I was fortunate enough that I had a supportive wife who followed what I was doing at D&B and ultimately made the ultimate sacrifice in letting me quit, which we'll talk about in a second, quit D&B and go start this other company that we started that turned out to be something pretty good. Yes, sir?
I just had a question. You moved around the country for promotions for that particular company, or were there different jobs?
Yeah, it was with the same company. This is all at Dun & Bradstreet. And it got better every time. It was a promotion just about every time, or some set of responsibilities that was different than the last job. And we moved all over the country for me to take advantage of them. Yeah. Was there more to that question?
Well, yeah, actually there was a little more. Now you said that you were pretty flexible and they were able to give you opportunities. Now, I'm pretty sure you worked really hard. So did you was it short term, like, and you kept on getting promotions, or was it was there, a lot of struggle involved in getting to those things levels?
Yeah, this is a really good question because, I don't want to paint the picture, and I think a lot of times as we come out of college, we feel like we should ascend to the presidency of a company like that next day, right? It's just our expectation is, I got my degree, I'm ready. And I definitely don't want to paint that picture, because I was learning something each time that prepared me for the next thing that I got, the next promotion that I got. But yeah, it was different opportunity. I was getting promoted the whole time, every time that we moved, but we were having to move. Physically move from one city to the other. But patience is important. Patience and being in 100% in wherever it is that you are. And if you do that, the chances of having success are greater than if you go in thinking, okay, I'm already thinking about the next thing. So I just took advantage of every opportunity, tried to maximize that opportunity, and then it led to me being in a position to be promoted to the next job. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Is D&B behind you at the same time, meaning are they helping you with relocation and packages and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's another good question. The environment is quite different now. As far as companies and their willingness to relocate folks, it was a different environment then. This was, I started in D&B on December 7th. I can remember this date, December 7th, 1987. And so it was, late 80s, early 90s. And so moving people around was kind of way of life if you were, in the corporate community. And it's not so much that now. Still a lot of moves when when companies feel important to take advantage of talent that's out there. But yes, they were behind me and they were supporting us financially for every one of those moves. I don't think any company is asking anyone to move on their own expense. So, yes, sir.
You moved 8 times. How many years did you move?
Actually, we moved 12 times in 15 years. Almost once a year.
See, do you think if you didn't make the moves that you made, you would have reached where you got to now?
His question was, do I think I would have gotten where I am now if I did not make the moves that I make? And so I don't want this to scare anybody. It doesn't mean that, again, it's a different environment. It's not like companies are looking for people, for talent to do as much as what I did in terms of moving. But the short answer to the question is, if I didn't take advantage of those opportunities, no, I don't think I would have accomplished what I've accomplished. I don't think I would have. So,
What was it for you? Because you were something in mind, and so...
Was it disruptive, was his question. It wasn't disruptive at all because, again, I was in a fortunate position to have support at home. And it was getting better for us every time. So it wasn't like random moves. It was like a promotion that gave our family a chance at a different lifestyle each time that it happened. So, and I saw it as such. I saw it as an opportunity to kind of keep moving us down this continuum that could have us be in a place where we wanted to be as a family. So it was always welcome. Now, that's not to say that every move was like, you know, I go home and say we were moving and it was, oh yay, we're moving. It wasn't that. And in fact, I remember distinctly when I got the news to move from Los Angeles to New Jersey, that was not something that was well received at home. And so I had to kind of, you know, convince and sell that it was going to be a good move for us ultimately as a family. And although my son was just born and my wife was there in LA, I commuted back and forth for a few months until we could get the house and get them moved, but it ultimately worked out. Yes, sir.
Were all the promotions unexpected, or do they tell you, you know, you go to this job in New York, if you work there for a year and do a good job, we're going to then move you to LA?
Yeah, no, it wasn't, if you do this, then that'll happen. It was, are you interested in doing this? And that's why, and this is why I'm saying you have to stay in the moment. I wasn't always forward looking to the next one. I was trying to position myself that if I did well, that I'd get another opportunity. So I just tried to stay in the moment and try to maximize the opportunity that I had before me. Again, a lot of us, particularly where most of you are, we suffer with, you know, ascending to the presidency before you're ready for it. And what happens is you don't necessarily deliver on what it is that you have as a responsibility today. And so you get derailed. That's, I think probably, I don't know this factually, but it's probably one of the biggest derailers that are out there, that if folks feel like that they need to be someplace before their time and not really done what they needed to in terms of maximizing the current opportunity. So we'll keep moving. While at D&B, there were a few things that professionally that were instrumental in my growth. I was fortunate enough to get hooked up with a few leaders that were very influential in my leadership style and having me to think about business and how to manage people in an effective way. There's one mentor in particular that I really give a lot of credit to with respect to teaching me the dynamics of managing people and how important people are in any equation, in any situation. I think it's a mistake that a lot of leaders make in not recognizing and embracing the importance of people management. A lot of managers today think it's fluffy and foo-foo kind of stuff to do to be concerned and to be focused in on your people. I actually think the exact opposite of that is that nothing gets done without people. At the center of anything that's successful is a person, generally. I mean, technology is a big part of our society today, and I'm certainly not trying to discount that, but I am saying without people, nothing really has the chance for being ultimately successful. And so I paid a real close attention to, Tal Phillips is his name, paid real close attention to all the lessons that he was teaching me about how it is to manage and deal with people. And I think it's resulted in some really good results, both for my time at D&B and for both of the companies that I've had the pleasure of being a part of. So D&B was influential there. And then the experiences along the way. So we talked about, being fully in the job that you have. Well, one of the assignments that I had in Dun & Bradstreet was in a center in Greensboro, North Carolina. So I was given this assignment. Actually, Tal Phillips, the gentleman that I just mentioned, put me in that assignment. And what happened there was that it was a high turnover, bad results, just not a really good operation that was happening there. So he put me in there to turn it around. And I think in part to give me a chance to learn some things about all the things that I needed to do to be successful as a leader. And that happened. When I went to Greensboro, we were successful in really turning that office around from 75, 80, 100% turnover to the best retained, low turnover office throughout all of D&B, and made I think some differences in a lot of the folks that worked their life. and how they lived and the things that they were doing both at work and at home. And that really turned me on to the idea that I could, if I had an opportunity to affect what we affected in Greensboro in another environment, really in a company for myself, that if that ever presented itself, that I would take full advantage of it. And so fortunately, a few years later, that is what happened. So we'll talk about that. Okay. So after the Greensboro experience, I was transitioned into a job in D&B that was in the sales organization. I never managed sales before. What I did at D&B mostly was around call centers and customer service. Greensboro was a call center. And so I moved. They moved me up to Chicago and then to Atlanta. And then I was doing a job where Dun & Bradstreet had a joint venture with AIG in New York. So I was actually commuting from Atlanta to New York. And I'd go up on Sunday night and I'd come home on Thursday. And I did that for the better part of a year. And then 9/11 happened. And it got really hard for me. I was actually in the city on 9/11. And what that took my family through, me being there and all of that, and then the difficulty getting back and forth, it kind of opened my eyes to, did I want to try to do something else? And happenstance was that D&B was making a decision at the same time to outsource the call center work that I had previously managed. So Tal Phillips again said to me, we're about to outsource this work. I said, oh, you are? So I started thinking about that, and one thing led to another, and I sort of raised my hand to the folks at D&B, and I said, look, I can help you guys move into this outsource world because I know this work, and you know me. I don't have a company right now, but I know how to do this work, and if you guys will give me a shot, I'll figure the company part of it out. So, the first thing I said to us was that we can't suffer from smallness of thought, that you have to think big. That was the first real example of that. I thought I was prepared. I'd gone through all the stuff with D&B. I started thinking, wow, you guys want to outsource this? I can do that. That's what I've been doing. It's just a matter of a small thing, setting up a company. That's how I was thinking about it. How hard could that be to set up a company? And so I started thinking about it that way, and I asked him, could I have a shot at this? And he said, yeah, we'll start you off small. So the work at D&B was making outbound phone calls to companies to update their information. So they gave me a contract for $25,000 to update 25,000 records. And so I didn't have a company, I didn't have anything. I had the basement of my home, and a couple of my friends knew about a call center out in Houston, and so they made the introduction to me to those folks. And I went out and I told them I have a contract and I'd like to work with you to help me fulfill this contract. And so we came to an agreement. And so I took the work that D&B had given me and I placed it in the call center in Houston. Things went good. We were doing really good. I was flying back and forth. I quit the job that D&B had me in and I went into this business for myself. And they started to allow that business to grow. They gave us more work. So I decided, well, I didn't want to be sort of the middleman and that I needed to establish a presence for myself. And so I started to try to figure out how we could raise the money to open a center here in Atlanta. And I was introduced to these two young ladies who had a small business consulting firm. They got with me and we put together a plan. We introduced it to some investors. We got our first round of investment, which was about $1 million, a little less than $1 million. And I opened the first center that we had right here in Woodstock. We had 100 seats of capacity, which means that we could employ 100 people, which we thought at the time was like, wow, this is like a big, big deal. 100 people could work here. And we had 10 or 12 in our first class of people that worked there. Things were going well. We started growing, kept growing. We outgrew that, and we looked for another place to operate. And so we found a campus here in Kennesaw, real close to here. And Hewlett-Packard had that center. It was 120,000 square feet and 2 big buildings and a campus atmosphere. And, so we, went about that, and we took half of that space down and outgrew that and took the rest of the space down, and, we were just in full bloom as a company. I think in large part that was because the principles that we were operating on was still centered around people. Kat mentioned in the intro that what we were trying to do was to create the best job that anybody ever had. If you work for us, we wanted you to think this is the best job I've ever had. And so we focused intently on that. Everything we did was around that simple thing. Best jobs you've ever had. We had a cafeteria on the campus. So, when you went in the cafeteria, it said, the best job you've ever had is fueled here. You walk into the call center, on the door it says, the best job you've ever had starts here. So everything was about that simple concept of having to be, something special for the people that were working there. So when we invited customers in, they got a chance to really see this and see it as really different, because the call center world, that's not what you normally see. What you see is sweatshop and everybody hating to be there, and it's definitely, no one's feeling like it's the best job that they've ever had. So we were out to, kind of disrupt that. And that led to a lot of success. We just kept growing and growing and growing, and we, ultimately outgrew that center. We opened a center in Mobile, Alabama, and then we went to Norfolk, Virginia, to Colorado Springs, to Chino, California. We opened up all these offices across the country. Yes?
How much of your business came from D&B, and when did you start expanding, if you did, to other companies as well?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Some of the troubles along the way is, you hear banks, and if you guys are in business or just even working for smaller companies, the issue of concentration. We were a big risk for banks because all of our business was coming from Dun & Bradstreet. For a short while, we were 100% concentrated on D&B. In other words, if D&B left us, we were going to be in trouble. But so we then did start to, in the first location, bring on new customers. We brought on LexisNexis, and then we got over in the new building, we brought on AT&T, and and then it started to grow. But early on, we were heavily concentrated in D&B, but D&B was a great selling point for us because they never left us. They're still a customer today. We've sold that company now. They're still a customer. So.
How much percentage of the customer base was D&B whenever you sold them?
Yeah, that's a very good, very, very good question. I never really thought about it until you just asked it. They were a minor part. If they were 1% to 2% of the business when we sold it, that would be saying a lot. So did everybody get his question? His question was, when we sold the business, so it went from them being 100% to when we sold it, them being 1 or 2%. It's just gives you, a perspective on how aggressive the growth was in our company and how things transformed over the years.
How did you go about picking leaders or managers for these locations that you are opening up?
Yeah, another good question. It was really a lot of the principle of kind of starting from within. So those folks that were on the job, that did well in the job, that demonstrated management potential, we tried to hone in on that, and we tried to do as much as we could from internal. So in the first few years, we didn't hire very many people that were at the management level from outside. It was mostly from the folks that were in it that demonstrated that actually understood our culture, understood what we were trying to do, and that we wouldn't disrupt what was important to us, which was trying to have this environment that was different than anybody else's. Later on, as we grew, we did have to go outside because, when you start to get bigger, the competency level that you need for certain disciplines, you need outside help for that. And so we started to bring in some folks in, but we always did it carefully and made sure that we didn't bring somebody in who didn't understand what was fundamentally important to us, which was our philosophy around people and the importance of people and what that translated into as far as our customers were concerned. To answer your, yes, sir.
I'm curious, what specific things did you do to make your company different from other cultures that you would say are not doing the same thing that Bridal is doing? so that they would make a point being there?
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that it has to start at the top. You know, so anything that happens in a company, if it's firmly entrenched and there's a belief in it and support from it at the very senior levels in the company, it generally gets done and it generally becomes what the company is all about. So I realized that it was a lot dependent upon me to set that tone. And so I would do little things like, so, you know, you have to understand this too. We were hiring a lot of people. At the end, we were 4,000 or so people that worked in our company. And still, you know, although we felt like turnover was best in class, it was still 25%. So we were turning over a lot of people coming in our company. Well, we would bring them in and they would have to come in through a training class. I made it my personal goal and a commitment to going to each one of those training classes and making sure everybody understood what we were trying to accomplish as a business. So I would go in personally, I would take the time. Most CEOs don't have this sort of commitment to something like going to a training class for someone that they're never going to interact with generally. And kind of making sure that they understood that this is what our company is about and that I'm accessible. I made myself completely accessible to the whole company, even up to the day that I left. Just to emphasize the importance of each individual that worked in our company. So small things like that are just so significant and important when you're establishing culture in a company. So it's not all of, you know, the tricks and frills and, you know, contests and, you know, the best job you've ever had was not about, you know, what we could do for people so much, you know, from a contest standpoint or any of that. We did a lot of that. I mean, it was supportive, like we gave away a car and, you know, we did those sorts of things, but we also wanted to be careful that we did not build an entitlement culture where people felt like they were entitled to us doing something for them, you know, because they worked at the company. You know, I fundamentally believe paying you, we should get something in return for our paycheck, right? And so we didn't do a lot of that. It was more the nurturing and paying attention to people. You know, we had 4 basic principles in our company. They were, you had to come to work every day. We expected you to be at work every day. We expect for you to come to work on time. We committed to teaching you, so we expected you to do the job as you've been taught. And the 4th one, you had to have a positive attitude. And we just kept, you know, you couldn't have a negative attitude without it being called out. You know, I'll tell a short story here, and I want to pay attention to time, but this will illustrate this point. So, you know, we were in the big call center, and we needed to build a break room. So we built this break room, and it was still in construction, but we were in such need of it, people had to start using it actually even before it was done. So the ceiling tiles in the break room weren't in. And so, you know, it was like when everybody went in there for lunch, all the noise came out and the people on the other side of the walls in the call center were complaining about, oh man, it's lunch, and everybody goes in there is so loud. So I happened to be walking by, and this is a true story, it's actually happened. So I was walking by this training room and walking by, and the associates were on the phone. One of the guys stopped me and he said, "Can you tell them to be quiet in the break room?" So I said, "Okay." So I walked to the break room and I stood in the door and I looked out in the break room and I said, guys, can you be quiet? They can't hear on the other side of the wall." And it's like this. And so a hush went over the room. And so I looked over in the corner, and there was this one young lady in the room, and she had this, you know, just like a growl on her face. It was, you know, you could tell something was wrong. And so I just looked at her and I said, "Smile," across the room, so she could, you know that I was telling her to smile. And she looked back at me and she said, "I don't want to smile." Just like that. So I said, "Ooh, okay." I said, you know, so I motioned her to come out in the hall with me. So she came out in the hallway, and I said, "Yeah, what's the matter?" I said, I just asked you to smile." She said, "But I don't want to smile." I said, "Okay, I get it. You don't want to smile. But you do remember number 4, right? Which is, you got to have a positive attitude." And I said, "I understand we're all going to have bad days, But it's the way that you present yourself is important here. You gotta stick to this number 4. You gotta have a positive attitude. I said, you understand? She said, yeah. I said, we're not having this conversation again, right? She said, no. So then as she walked away, she's like, yeah, right, like rolled her eyes, and she didn't think I saw it. And I did. I did see her. I said, wait, come back. Come go with me. Come go with me. And I walked her right to HR, and I said, this young lady doesn't want to work for us anymore. And we let her go. So the point was, it wasn't that we were firing people because, folks were like, they're firing people because they didn't want to smile. And that wasn't the point. It wasn't that it was, her attitude was not something that I could take a chance on, right? So the way that this works is that what would have happened is she would have went back to her chair and she would sit next to someone, and that person would get full effect of this growl on her face. And then it's just a matter of time before the person sitting next to her has got a growl on their face. And they're talking to our customer's customer. So, generally how you feel, somebody on the other end of the phone will understand and know that. So I could not take a chance for her to get on the phone and represent something that wasn't good for our customers. So I had to make that step, and it also reinforced what we were trying to do as a company. So if you understand anything about a call center environment, that news spread like this. So like everybody understood and knew that it was a serious thing about this thing about having a positive attitude in our company. So, people would, I would ask for questions or whatever, and the way that it kind of turned out is that folks would say, well, I'm not trying to be negative, but can I ask this question? So, yeah. So anyway, Ryla turned out to be, a really good success. And, thinking big was at the center of that. I just, always thought we could do it. And I always encouraged our team. I always had them thinking that, look, this is going to be something really, really big. And so let's all think that way. So in 2010, we went out to recapitalize the business. We went from 15 million to like 30 million to the next year over 100 million. It was just crazy growth. So we went out to recapitalize the business and put more money in to keep the growth going. And what happened was we wind up selling the business. So we sold it in 2010 to a California-based company called Alorica. So that put me in a little bit of a lull because I had sold the company. I stayed there for a little bit to help them transition, and then I moved out. And I started doing things. We don't have Kennesaw State up here, but I did a few things over here. Kat mentioned them. But I went down to Georgia Tech, and I was entrepreneur in residence there. I started trying to give back and started trying to do some of this and teach some of the lessons that I had learned both at D&B and what we'd done at Ryla. Because I do think it's important, and it's important for you guys to seek out folks, because there's a lot of folks out there that once things have happened successfully for them, the thing that they get the most joy out of is sharing. They want to talk about it. It's important to them, and that's where I am in life now. Even though we're in a new venture here, you guys should seek these folks out and try to learn as much as you can, so that when you're making the transition, you can benefit from the mistakes that have been made by somebody else already. Yes, sir.
Going back a little bit, I have 2 questions. First, I was kind of curious what your degree was when you went to college.
I have a degree in business management.
Okay, and then second, how important was that degree? Because as a student, I kind of struggled on what to decide on with no real help. So, how important was that degree to your success?
Education is just a fundamental foundation for anything that you can do. There are success stories out there, folks that didn't finish college. I mean, you hear the Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and all that, but there are only those few, right? And so I don't want to. So definitely, there's a place for that, and it just depends on what happens there. But my belief is that a college education for opportunities like this one are just important for what it is that you're trying to do to move forward in life professionally. I just think it's important. Yes, ma'am.
In selling Ryla, did the company in California maintain and keep the culture that you had set up, or did they kind of take it to their own?
Yeah, well, I try not to stay so closely connected to that. My understanding is that it's not the same. They don't have the same focus on people and the things that we did. It's a different focus. I would say something else, but publicly I won't. But yes, sir.
A couple things. One, how did you find it? Most entrepreneurs find it very difficult to transition from a small company up to, say, 10 million.
Yeah.
To move up to basically what becomes a fairly corporate cultured environment at $50, $100 million.
Yeah.
And how did you find the challenges of doing that? That's my first question. And my second one was, outside of your ability to handle people, which clearly is a huge strong suit of yours, did you see the ability to, in that particular time period, outsourcing call environments became very large. Most of the companies divested their own call centers out. So did you see that opportunity when you presented that out and said, okay, because clearly there's an element of seeing a little bit of what's going to happen in the future and then figuring out how to best position yourself to do that business.
Yeah, so I'll take the last one first. The way I saw it, that was an opportunity. I didn't really look at it like, it was more mission driven. I felt like in the Greensboro example, this was a chance for me to go make a difference in some people's lives. As cliche as that sounds, that was really at the center of it. My wife will tell you, we were walking, I said, I think this is a great opportunity. I think I can go do this. And what we started talking about, what she actually started talking about was, well, we got to give them health insurance. It was really about trying to make a difference, and not so much that we could grow this and be some big, corporate entity in that. And it just worked out. I think that is why it did grow, because we had our priorities about what the company was about established and firmly established from the beginning, which leads into your second question, which was about the corporate kind of mindset.
Few entrepreneurs actually, clearly you have that ability. Very few entrepreneurs have the ability to transition from being an entrepreneur to being a real corporate leader.
Yeah. Well, so let me just say, that's what I was trying not to be. And if I told you to take your first question now, is that I resisted, and still do in our current operation, any opportunity or any a risk of turning into a corporate culture. And I'm not trying to disparage corporations or any of that. It has to be more, people have to be bought in. And so we had a core of leaders that were completely bought in and that were there from the beginning. And so I had a lot of help and support for maintaining that. So I can't take the credit for it, personally by myself. We had a great team. We really did. And so much so that most of us are together now, and anything we're doing is, the foundation with all of us is so strong. Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm trying, Kat. Yeah.
Right, as you become 5,000 people, 2 years of going, how did you struggle with the possibility that your vision might get distorted and allowing others to manage?
I just never accepted it. I just never accepted. And, I'll give the example like IBM, right? IBM is one of the biggest companies in the world. And, everybody knew, like in the 50s, everybody knew, and maybe now we won't reflect on this in a positive way, but everybody knew what their corporate environment was. You couldn't wear a blue shirt. You couldn't have facial hair. They're the biggest company in the world. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, they can, it's just, you just got to establish it and be true to it, committed to what it is that you're trying to do. The example I gave about going to the training classes, that was a way for me to carry forward. We started doing things like, I would record a message on Friday that got sent out to the whole office and company when they logged in to their PC on Monday, just so that I could make sure that I was in front of people and that I kept the idea moving. You just have to be committed. It can be done.
You said at one point you were trying to go out and recapitalize your business and stuff, and that's when you decided to sell it.
Yeah.
What opportunity did you see that you were like, better call for me to just sell
Well, it wasn't really me. I had investors in the business, right? I had private equity. We raised money a couple times, and so those guys, their desire is to get a return on their investment. And so, and the offers were good. And so for the companies that were making the offer were making a commitment that they were going to kind of continue what we were doing. And so I kind of thought that would be okay, and that it would be a good chance. Maybe I could do some other things and through other opportunities if I went ahead and participated in the sale of the business. And so we ultimately made that choice.
So did you feel like you accomplished a lot of what you were trying to have happen with your business?
100%, because there are so many folks that started their own company out of the experience of RILA, and there's not any place that I can go today where I don't meet people, and most of those interactions are positive, where they feel they had a good experience at RILA. So I think we did what we were trying to do. I think we made a difference and continue to make a difference, I believe. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I got a question as far as I've been reading this book by Robert K. called Rich Dad Poor Dad, describing the mentality between and he says that you want to be able to work to learn. So do you really agree with that? Instead of like working to get money, you work to learn certain like particular skills to move on to incorporate skills?
Yes, I do. The money will come. I mean, it's like you can't keep a closed eye to it. I mean, you got to understand finance. So I'm not trying to say, be blind and dumb to the issues and the facts around money when you're working either as an entrepreneur or in a corporate environment. You definitely do need to understand how all the money works in an operation. But the focus, if your focus is more mission driven and you can develop a passion for it, the chances, in my opinion, of you being successful and achieving the wealth are greater than if you're just focused on the wealth. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever personally go and speak to your employees and ask them if they felt like it was the best job ever?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did. Formally through surveys, and that, it was my it got hard at the end, with 3,000 or 4,000 people, but it was my personal goal to know everybody's name. For a long time, for a very long time, I knew everybody I could go and say, hey, Carol, how's your mom? It was that kind of thing because it was important to me. My life experience had to be that, I didn't want someone to greet me and not really understand who I was. I'll just say this. Corporately, I would be in a meeting and think that I brought extreme value and see a senior leader the next day in the hall and knew that person had no idea. He's trying to remember what my name was. I'm like, no one was ever going to experience that under my leadership. I was just committed to that. So, we did. And you're not going to 100% please everybody. I'm not trying to represent that everybody that worked at our company felt like it was the best job that you ever had. There are some people that are impossible to get that accomplished with. Just trust me. So, don't even try to feel like you're going to be 100% successful in that, because you won't. It's a good aspirational goal to have. And I think we did pretty good. My gut says that, and just the interactions I had with people, I think it was okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was just personally attest because I worked for your company for a while.
So was it the best job you ever had? Yeah, good.
It's like that. It was neck and neck with. I work at Chick-fil-A now.
Okay.
So yeah, you pretty much topped it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
When he came into our class, there was a ripple after. Is that
Yeah.
And then they was like, yeah, that's the CEO of the company and all this, and it was like, wow.
See, I wasn't lying. I wasn't. I got one more slide, and then I'll be done, Kat. I know you. So what happened after I did the entrepreneur in residence thing and whatever, one of my investors called me up and they said, look, Mark, we had a good run in this last one. Why don't we look at another opportunity here? And they had looked at E-Verify and passed on them. They didn't make the investment, and they said, let's go look at it together. So we did. and we kind of like what we saw there. What E-Verify does is background screens. We do it both for pre-employment and then for the contractor screening world. And so it felt like a good opportunity. And so Frontier Capital, myself, and then I had a relationship with Magic Johnson Enterprises, and they were involved in a fund with UKIPA out on the West Coast, and so that fund invested in our company too. So we have Magic Johnson and his team as a part of our ownership structure. We bought this company in 2012, and we're right now engaged in trying to grow it and have similar success that we had in the RILA example. I got a lot of my core team members that came over with me from RILA there, and so that's kind of we're thinking a little bit bigger. So we're educated now about a lot of the pitfalls that are involved with growing a business. We're using those as leverage to try to make some more solid and fundamental decisions about how it is we move our company forward. And right now things are pretty good, and we continue to try to bring on more customers. So that's kind of where we are now. With a lot of the same principles. I mean, we don't have the people intensity in terms of number of people in the Verifile example is what we did in RILA, but the same sort of principles. We're doing the same sort of things on a much smaller scale with E-Verifile is what we did at RILA. Yes, sir. Right now, we opened an office in Sacramento. We did that in January this year, and between the two offices, I think we're 110, 115 so people.
Yeah, and I asked that to kind of play off my earlier question. Do you think it's going to be easier to implement your philosophy at the lower employee level?
What's interesting about this question is that, I've actually found it a little bit more challenging because we bought this business, and it wasn't, that we started it up from the ground where we could firmly entrench what it is that we thought and our management philosophies and get them in place. It's been harder to kind of teach an old dog new tricks, because people start to believe this is how you're supposed to operate at work. And now I got to retrain them that, no, this is not how we do this. It's going to be different here. So it's actually been a little bit more challenging trying to get that done than what it was in the first example. That's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
Under services, you have advisory services to startups. Do you do that through incubators or any type of programs, or do you do it personally?
It's more me personally giving them my time. I don't know how to say no yet. It's incredible, and because I enjoy it, and although time is really kind of limited, but my assistant spends a lot of time putting people on my calendar that have nothing to do with what we're doing. It has nothing to do with business for us or anything. It's more me trying to be helpful and trying to support folks that I know where they are. I've been there, and so I think it's important to keep that continuity and to try to help where you can. So, I don't even try to think about, well, should I be doing it or not? Sometimes it's not convenient, but it's important. So we do it.
Well, I do need advice.
Yeah, so, okay. I'm easily accessible, so, it's really on you to make that happen. Yes, sir.
You started two companies with one of the major principles being people first.
Yeah.
Now, how did this implementation and how did this translate into corporate strategy differently with the two companies?
Just kind of fundamentally, there was a lot more people in the first than in the second. And just what I just touched on is that, you have folks that have been used to working in a certain environment in the second example where we acquired them. Whereas the first, we home grew it, and I could implement and establish what we were trying to do. Now I'm trying to change, and those are the two differences. But commitment at the end of the day, if you're committed to it and you know it's right, and principally you don't accept anything different, then it's achievable. It's working in our current environment. It's just been more of a challenge. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, I'm sure most of you guys didn't hear that. She said, what explain the difficulty in transitioning from a corporate culture to an entrepreneurial one, and what are the traits that you needed to display to make that happen? That was your question, right? Yeah, so corporate, everything is figured out for you. You know, I mean, everything is there, the fax machine, whatever it is. When we started the company, there was no fax machine. In fact, there was not toilet paper. You know, so we had to figure all of that out, right? We had to go do whatever it is, you know, in a company, and those are just two different things. But I think in the entrepreneurial example, when you transition out, you got to be resilient, because no is just a common part of your day. No matter what it is that you're doing, if you're trying to get, you know, bank financing, if you're trying to win a customer, if you're trying to get an employee to do certain things, no is always at the center of generally what's happening. So you got to be resilient and try to figure out how to overcome those no's. And I think that's the biggest thing. And that, you know, that point about nothing's figured out for you, having the discipline to know that nothing's figured out and that you have to do it. You have to go, if you want it to get done, you have to do it. Yes, sir.
Between everything that you've done between Arkansas and today, this is a very generic question, but with everything that you've accomplished, do you have any regrets, either personally or professionally? Have you thought about what your life would be like had you changed, or like did a different alternative, do a strategy, or?
No regrets. Don't have any regrets at all. I mean, a lot of mistakes, and you know, obviously in hindsight, if I could do something different and not make the mistake, probably in some cases I'd still make the mistake because I learned from it, right? So, but no regrets.
Reading on your thing, you said make quick decisions. Coming from like an entrepreneurial mindset, I know decisions you need to be able to make them quick and effective. But what's the process to go about doing that? Because you need to make sure that you're making the right decision, the smart ones. How do you do that?
Wow, this is not going to be a conventional answer here, and you know, because it's not everything done conventionally. But I like my gut. I mean, I really trust my human instinct on a lot of things. There's a lot of documented things out there that says that you shouldn't trust your gut because it's not right. But it's proved okay for me over the years. But I would say support that natural instinct with varying opinions and thought from people that you trust. So that if you're in a management environment and you have a team of folks that you trust, understand what your gut is, but validate that with the feedback that you can get from others that you're surrounded with. And so I've tried to do that. And sometimes I don't even like what's being said around the table. And I'm like, I like my gut here, guys. You know, and sometimes you got a, you know, executive decision kind of thing here. But, you know, I mean, that's how I would answer that. Yes, sir.
Yes, looking at where Facebook is right now, and then where Google is, where you could just go to Google or go to Facebook and get tons of information about people's background. Do you somehow feel threatened about your business? And if you do, what contingencies are you planning? Do you have to transition or whatever?
His question was about, you know, do I feel threatened about any external factors with other companies, Google and Facebook and social media aspects of things? And that's your question, correct?
Yeah, you know, you could just go there freely, get free information about people. You think, you know, your business is, where do you see your kind of...
You're just talking about E-Verify? Yeah. No, I mean, the information is public record, a lot of the stuff, but it's more, you know, in the courts, in this, you know, information that is somewhat protected. And it's just a matter of delivery and how it is that you're packaging the information to give it back to customers. So no, I don't feel any threat from any public sources of information that's out there giving the information away free. Not now. Yes, ma'am.
What might be some ways to leverage your experience? Like now we're going into a corporate environment. Did you kind of hook up with other managers? Did you kind of partnership? Did you get more involved in the community? What did you do to kind of make those 12 different times you moved and got promotions to make that happen?
How did that? Well, I mean, I was working for D&B, and I said this earlier, I stayed in the moment. So they gave me a job, I understood what that job was, and I absolutely tried to kill it. I just tried to separate myself from anybody else who was doing that same job so that when they were looking at talent, they were looking at me. You just got to stay in the moment and maximize the opportunities that you have. Be the very best at whatever it is that you have before you. And then the opportunities, everybody's looking for talent. You know, in companies, they're looking for the next best thing, the next best person. Make yourself that. You control it. You absolutely control it. You know, I think a lot of folks depend on, you know, subjective things to get promotions and to try to move ahead. I never did. I was just like, okay, here's a job. This is what they want me to do. I'm going to kill it.
One more question.
Yeah.
So, as you have experience in getting capital or raising capital for the firms or businesses that you started,
Yep.
Two questions, actually, twofold. What was your biggest challenge in actually sitting down with investors, and how did you actually get them to invest in your company?
You guys probably didn't hear. She was asking a question about raising money. What was the biggest challenge in that, and how did I prepare? Raising money is really hard because these guys are trained to invest their money in the right places. And so the key to raising money effectively is to be absolutely prepared for whatever it is that you're going into business where you have to have you can't take any shortcuts. So an effective model that defines out how you're going to spend the money that you're trying to raise, how it is that you're going to give them a return on their money, who are the team members that are going to be a part of your team that are going to help us to achieve these things. All those things have to be packaged and buttoned up real tight. And then you get the opportunity to go and sit in front of people and convince them of that. And, you know, so I didn't take any shortcuts. And I was very well prepared every chance that I got to sit before folks that had the potential to invest in me. And
So, were you speaking, given that your businesses are more service-oriented instead of profit-oriented, I know it's a lot more difficult to actually get investors to invest in something that's not tangible. So I'm trying to figure out what steps did you take other than preparing a well drawn-out business plan and ensuring that success, because you don't have a tangible product.
yeah, well, so I mean, I don't know that there's an answer to that, right? I mean, if you definitely, you have to get before them and convince them that what your idea is one that can get them a return. And that's the name of that game. And, you know, warm introductions is important. You know, if you know people that can get you to where there's an audience that's really listening to what you say, because these guys see a lot of ideas, a lot of plans, you know, and so that might be, you know, some advice that I could give you is to try to go to sources that can get you in front of an audience warmly. Yeah.
Mark, thank you. What a great talk.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
It's always wonderful when you can hear the personal story of somebody built into their success story as well, and I think that's central to what we hear in your talk today. Have one other thing I want to do real quickly before we leave. Mark, I mailed you a letter yesterday, and in that letter it talks about a new recognition that we're doing in the Coles College, and it's being started this year, and it's the Coles College of Hall of Fame. Okay. And it recognizes folks that embody personal integrity, community leadership, and an entrepreneurial spirit. And so we would like you to be one of our 6 inaugural inductees into the Hall of Fame. And let me give you the names of the other folks that would be inducted with you. One of them is Tom Hughes, who is with us today, and I know that you know Tom personally. Michael Coles, I think all of us have heard that name before. Connie Engel, Connie is the president of our KSU Foundation. Gene Hensler Foundation, and then one of our alums also, Kirsten Valdez, and I think I got everybody I did. But we would be honored if you would also be one of our inductees into the Hall of Fame.
Well, how could I say no to that? Thank you.